Welcome to the P.A.S. Report podcast. If you're tired of censorship, outraged by government abuses, and thirsty for real insights, then you're in the right place. Get ready, because here, the fight for freedom never ends. Here's your host, Professor Nick Giordano.
Welcome to the America's Founding series on the P.A.S. Report podcast. I want to thank you for joining me today. Make sure that you follow and subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Also visit the P.A.S. Report website, pasreport.com, and share this episode with your family and friends, because on the America's Founding series, we showcase forgotten patriots, patriots that don't get talked about in school, patriots that help shape the American identity and helped America become the exceptional nation that it is. And last week, we delved into the life and the tragic sacrifice of Dr. Joseph Warren. It was a fitting Memorial Day episode because we had to talk about what Dr. Joseph Warren did and the sacrifice he made at the Battle of Bunker Hill. Now, today, we're returning to the same pivotal hill, but this time, our gaze is going to turn to a different man, a forgotten patriot whose name isn't shouted from the rooftops, but he should be known to every single American. His musket shot changed the course of a battle and perhaps a nation's understanding of what freedom really is. He certainly hasn't gotten the recognition that he deserves, and I'm talking about Peter Salem. Peter Salem's story isn't just about a single heroic act in one battle, even though that's certainly compelling. Rather, his story is a testament to the complexity of the American Revolution. His story woven with threads of sacrifice, determination, and the often overlooked contributions of those who fought for liberty that they themselves hadn't really experienced. And this is what makes the story all the more remarkable. He was born into the harsh reality of slavery in Framingham, Massachusetts around 1750, and Peter's early life was that of countless others. It was defined by forced labor, denial of basic human rights. He was owned by a man named Captain Jeremiah Farrar, and the very idea of liberty and freedom that fueled the rumbles of the American Revolution, it had to have held a unique and poignant meaning for Peter. While the colonists chafed under British taxation and control, Peter and others like him lived a life under a far more direct and oppressive form of servitude. And we can't ignore our past history. We can't ignore that fact. And as tensions escalated between the American colonists and the British, a strange and powerful confluence of events began to unfold. The call for colonial militias, it grew louder and louder. And there was a significant dilemma regarding the participation of Black individuals, regardless of whether they were enslaved or free. See, the problem the colonists had was a fear that if you armed Black people, that ultimately those guns would turn against the colonists themselves, that there would be some type of slave rebellion. Yet there was also a desperate need for manpower on the front lines. I mean, we're going to be going against the British, and so we need soldiers. It was in this atmosphere that Peter Salem's life took a dramatic turn. In exchange for his enlistment in the colonial militia, his owner, Captain Farrar, granted him his freedom. Now, think about that for a moment, because it gives weight to the expression that freedom is never free. Peter had to fight for the liberty of a nation that was still grappling with its own internal contradictions, and it spoke volumes about his courage and his deep yearning for freedom, not just for the abstract idea of America, but for himself. He ended up joining Captain Simon Edger's company, which was part of Colonel Asa Whitcomb's regiment, and later he's going to be attached to Captain Thomas Nixon's company. Now, he was there on the very cusp of the revolution. As the whispers of rebellion continued to grow louder, the revolution is going to become all but inevitable. Then we get the shot heard round the world at Lexington and Concord on April 19, 1775, officially kicking off the American Revolution. Peter Salem was among the militia who answered the call. He marched to confront the British regulars. He was there, witness to the chaos and the determination of colonists who wanted to have their freedom. And this was his baptism by fire, his first taste of armed conflict for the cause of American independence. But it was 2 months later that a more important event happened. It was a sweltering day. in June, and Peter Salem would etch his name into the annals of American history on a small strategic elevation overlooking Boston. And I'm talking about Breed's Hill. So now we call it the Battle of Bunker Hill because both Breed's Hill and Bunker Hill were reinforced. But the actual battle took place at Breed's Hill. And this was the battle that I spoke about last week when it came to Dr. Joseph Warren, that Warren would ultimately sacrifice his life for a cause much greater than himself. I explained how the American forces were largely outnumbered, they were outgunned, but they were able to fortify Breed's Hill and the neighboring Bunker Hill. And as I explained last week, the orders were clear. Don't fire until you see the whites of their eyes. Wait till the British are extremely close, and then you're going to open fire. And it was a desperate stand against the formidable military might of the British military. The Redcoats, under Major General William Howe, they advanced in disciplined lines, their bayonets glinting in the sun. And remember, the British were a well-trained, well-armed fighting force. We were just a bunch of farmers. The fight that's going to take place at Breed's Hill, it was brutal. Waves of British soldiers being cut down by devastating volleys of the American militia. Imagine being on the front lines. The sheer terror, the fear that must have gripped the hearts of both the advancing British soldiers and the steadfast Americans. For the Americans, ammunition was scarce, and every shot is going to count. Now, amidst the smoke and the roar of cannons, amidst the cries of the wounded on the battlefield, the dead lying there, stood Peter Salem, a free man fighting for a nation that was still defining what freedom actually meant. And it was during the third and final British assault that one of the most famous moments of the battle, and indeed of Peter Salem's life, occurred. British Major John Pitcairn, a prominent and much-hated British officer known for his role at Lexington and Concord, was leading the charge, shouting, "The day is ours, the day is ours." And according to numerous eyewitness accounts, both black and white, it was Peter Salem who raised his musket and fired a shot. Major Pitcairn fell, mortally wounded, and the death of such a high-ranking and symbolic British officer sent a ripple through the British ranks, gave the colonists a boost in morale. It demoralized the British advance, threw them into confusion. And while the Americans would ultimately have to retreat because of the lack of ammunition, Peter Salem's shot was a moment of profound courage and defiance that would live throughout history. His act was recognized immediately. You had Reverend Jeremy Belknap, who recorded the account, noting that the shot fired was by a black man. Other accounts from soldiers present at the battle directly corroborate what Peter Salem did. And perhaps the most enduring and important testament to his heroism is his inclusion in the painting that I talked about last week. John Trumbull's iconic 1786 painting, The Battle of Bunker Hill. Peter Salem is depicted prominently, holding his musket, just as Major Pitcairn falls. Trumbull himself, who knew many of the battle's participants, included Salem for a reason, because Peter Salem deserved his due. He deserved the recognition. This act, this single powerful moment, cemented Peter Salem's place in history. It demonstrated unequivocally that Black Americans were just as capable and vital to the success of the American cause. When we look at Peter, the story goes beyond Bunker Hill. He spent years of continued service to the Patriot cause. He deserves a legacy as a man who fought for a nation's freedom, who did so much for the nation, but also someone who forged his own destiny. When we look, the act of Peter Salem killing Major John Pitcairn, it's a symbol, a powerful symbol of American grit. That's part of our American identity. We can't ignore this invaluable contribution. It extends through years of dedicated service, unwavering commitment. And he continued to serve in the Continental Army. He was present at the Battle of Harlem Heights in September of 1776, a critical American victory that boosted morale after a long string of defeats. He then served in campaigns leading up to the pivotal Battle of Saratoga in October of 1777. And that's really important because this is going to be a turning point in the war. It's going to be the Battle of Saratoga that makes the French decide that they are going to assist us in the cause, in the Patriot cause against the British. And Peter Salem's military record shows that he actively participated in these major engagements. He wasn't just a bystander. He didn't just have one moment at Bunker Hill. He was a consistent and reliable soldier, and his service continued through some of the war's most challenging periods, including the harsh winter encampment at Valley Forge. And there are some records where we don't know how long he spent there or the specific presence, but his unit was certainly part of the larger Continental Army movements at the time. And he fought at the Battle of Monmouth in June of 1778, one of the largest battles of the war. He later fought at the Battle of Stony Point in July of 1779, and this was a daring American bayonet charge that captured a key British fort. And I want you to think about the physical and emotional toll of these years, the constant marching, the harsh conditions, especially when we look at Valley Forge, the lack of basic provisions. Soldiers didn't even have boots in the middle of winter. They were lacking food, ammunition, and then the ever-present threat of battle, ultimately, death knocking right at your doorstep. For Peter, this was not just a fight for a political ideal. It was a fight for the potential of a future where his own freedom and the freedom of others would finally be realized. And his continued service speaks volumes to his conviction and his resilience. Now, his military career eventually saw him serve under Colonel Rufus Putnam in the Massachusetts 5th Regiment. He served for about 5 years in the Revolution. And that's a remarkable length of service for any soldier, especially for someone like Peter, who had already gained his freedom through his enlistment. Let's think about this for a minute. The average colonist served 3 years in the American Revolution. Peter did what he was supposed to do. He could have left. He made his mark. He was a hero. He already got his freedom. He could have gotten an honorable discharge, but he chose to continue fighting for the cause. And records show that he was honorably discharged at the end of the American Revolution, a free man in a newly freed nation. Now, after the war, the struggles happened, right? Peter went back to Massachusetts, where he settled, married a woman named Mary. And like many veterans of the Revolution, and in modern times, they have a difficult time where they have to readjust to civilian life. It's not all that easy to do. So as a veteran after the Revolution, he struggled, just like every other soldier, both black and white. They faced challenges. This promise of the new nation often didn't translate immediately into economic stability or opportunity. As a newborn nation, we had a lot of problems, and things were difficult. Despite Peter's heroic actions, he struggled to earn a living. He worked as a cane weaver and a farmer, but the opportunities were limited. And his later years were marked by the common struggles of the post-war era, a young nation trying to grapple with its own identity and its own economic future. Now, he did receive a small pension for his service, and it was small, but it was an important recognition of his sacrifice. And ultimately, Peter Salem is going to pass away on August 16th, 1816, at the age of 66 in Framingham, Massachusetts, the same town where he was born into slavery. And this is part of a remarkable story of America. He was buried in the old burying ground, and his grave was marked by a simple stone, stands as a quiet testament to a life lived in service to a cause that was much greater than himself. In 1882, the town of Framingham erected a monument in his honor, a more prominent recognition of his contributions. It too stands at the old burial ground, ensuring that Peter Salem's name and his story is not forgotten, that we still remember it today. Peter Salem wasn't alone. He was one of nearly 5,000 black men, both enslaved and free, who fought in the American Revolution. Men like Salem Poor, who fought bravely at Bunker Hill and was praised by petition. 14 officers vouched for his valor. You had James Armistead Lafayette, a double agent whose intelligence work was critical to our victory at the Battle of Yorktown. You had Prince Estabrook, wounded at Lexington and Concord, the very beginning of the fight for independence. These men, like Peter Salem, helped build the foundation of a country that had yet to recognize independence for all, but whose ideals they nonetheless believed in enough to fight and bleed for. Peter's story, it's a powerful reminder powerful reminder of several crucial aspects of America's founding. I mean, first, it underscores the vital contributions of Black Americans in the American Revolutionary War. They fought and died with honor. They fought and died for the ideals of liberty and independence. And their presence on the battlefield challenged the very notion of who was capable of patriotism and courage. Peter represents the complex and sometimes contradictory nature of our early history. A war fought for freedom, yet slavery is going to remain as an institution. Figures like Peter embody this tension. He is living proof that the pursuit of liberty was a multifaceted journey, sometimes requiring individuals to fight for others' freedom in order to eventually secure their own. Peter Salem is no doubt an inspiring figure. His journey from enslavement to soldier to battlefield hero, his continued service throughout the years, the hardships he faced, the fight for a nation that slowly and imperfectly moved towards a more perfect union of freedom. It offers us a profound lessons in resilience, courage, and an enduring human spirit that is lacking in today's day and age because of our failed education system. His shot at Bunker Hill wasn't just a military action. It was a defiant statement, a bold assertion of dignity and self-worth in a cruel world that often denied both throughout history. And his legacy, it compels us to look beyond the dominant narratives. We need to recognize that diversity was present in America from the very beginning, no matter what some people try to claim today. Even at our founding, the contribution of individuals from all walks of life, from an Italian merchant's influence on the Declaration of Independence with Filippo Mazzi, to Polish patriots like Thaddeus Kosciuszko and Haym Salomon, to patriot poet Phil Sweetley and battlefield hero Peter Salem, they all helped forge the United States of America. They all deserve to be recognized. It shows why we're such an exceptional nation. And they remind us that the fight for freedom was often led and sustained by so many people who had so much to gain, but they also had so much to lose. Now, if you found the content of this episode informative, please give the P.A.S. Report a 5-star rating on any podcast platform that allows it. Take 30 seconds to write a good review, particularly on Apple Podcasts. It helps people discover the podcast. And share this episode. Share it with your family and friends. And don't forget to visit the P.A.S. Report website, PASreport.com. I want to thank you for joining me, and I'll be back next week with more great episodes of the P.A.S. Report.
Thank you for listening to the P.A.S. Report. Don't forget to rate, share, and hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss an episode. For more exclusive content and updates, visit us at PASreport.com and follow Professor Giordano on all social media platforms at P.A.S. Report.